We pay respect to the Algonquin people, who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous peoples in this region, from all nations across Canada, who call Gatineau home. We recognize the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future.
Quit everyone, my name is Maya Emoji and I'm the founder and the CEO of Cookum Scrunchies. I am 10 years old and Algonquin from Kitigan-Zibi. Orange Orange Shirt Day is important because it gives everyone a chance to learn, remember, and honor those that went to residential schools.
Hello everyone, my name is Cindy Blackstock. I'm a member of the Gitxsan First Nation. I'm so honored to join you from unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin territory here in Ottawa. Why is Orange Shirt Day important? Well, it's the day that we honor and recognize the children who are lost in residential schools and the survivors. And there's another piece to this too. And that is that we do our part to implementing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. My dream for the future, a generation of Indigenous children that don't have to recover from their childhoods, and a generation of non-Indigenous kids who never have to say they're sorry.
Hello everybody, my name is Alicia Cardinal. I'm from Buffalo Lake Métis Settlement, and I'm also from Goodfish First Nations, also known as Whitefish Lake. I am Nihio or Cree, and I'm also Métis. So my dad is Cree and my mom is Métis, which is why I identify as being Métis Cree. If someone that has no idea what Orange Shirt Day is and they see everybody wearing shirts one day, like, why is everybody wearing orange shirts? And oh, this is Orange Shirt Day. It is to honor residential school survivors and for all the children who couldn't make it home. And that person will maybe take that step forward and Google and educate themselves of what residential schools were and how it continues to impact Indigenous people today. You're telling a story with these t-shirts, and it means way more than what you would think it would be.
Tansei Blake Desjardins here, federal NDP MP for Edmonton Griesbach. To all of my fellow Indigenous young people out there, please know I'm very proud, and you should be too, that our people are continuing to speak our language, continuing to be present with the land, and continuing to make sure the next generation can thrive. And to all those who are non-Indigenous, thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for wearing orange today. It's important that we as a country remember our history and remember that not everything in Canada has been perfect, but together, through understanding, through listening to one another, respect, and love, we can make sure that we can overcome any difference.
All of the wounds that your hands hold, all of the hurt you hide.
Contribution and your advocacy for Indigenous people is so important. If you're Indigenous, you're beautiful, you are bright, and always shine.
Hi, I'm Haley Pateko from the Penelakut tribe, and I reside in Victoria. Well, first, thank you. Just to us as Indigenous people, your support means everything. You can't just go and say, well, I believe in this cause, but I'm just not gonna go out there, but cause what's one person? But if everybody thought that, no one would be there. And it's just, it really touches our heart seeing those waves of orange at marches and ceremonies. Orange Shirt Day is also Truth and Reconciliation Day, and a big part of that is the truth, even though it isn't the best truth. In order for us all to be reconciled, we have to know the truth and not just leave it in the past because that's where it belongs, but we have to think about it because where would we be without the past?
The goal was to resolve the so-called Indian problem. So in 1883, the Canadian government officially instituted the residential school system. By the 1930s, nearly 75% of Indigenous children between the ages of 7 and 15 were forced to attend these schools. Unable to return home for months or even years, Indigenous children were often neglected and abused, stripped of their language and culture. Thousands of children died while at residential school. Others went missing, never to be seen again. At least 150,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children were institutionalized over the course of more than 100 years. There are approximately 80,000 living survivors. Some have become leaders in their communities, teachers, counselors, commissioners. For many, the trauma of the mental, physical, and sexual abuse they suffered hasn't faded. The children and grandchildren of survivors have inherited those wounds. They have persisted, manifesting as depression, anxiety, family violence, suicidal thoughts, substance use. This is called intergenerational trauma, and it can take generations to heal. For Indigenous peoples, that healing can involve a return to the culture that was taken from them. For others, it involves formal acknowledgement of their experiences.
There is no place in Canada for the attitudes that inspired the Indian residential school system to ever prevail again.
For Canada, it means confronting the past and working towards reconciliation. Laws and apologies are necessary to help us move forward, but reconciliation also requires true understanding and empathy to create space where healing is possible.
Yeah, I'd say everybody's kind of in a minority, really. Like, everybody can be part of a minority, and everybody is for something they do, just like their race, their religion.
J'ai l'impression que c'est moins comme multiculturel. There's only like white people in there. It's missing something.
Ben, je suis content, mais si je vois pas moi-même là-dedans.
It looks more diverse than last.
Je vois des jeunes qui sourient, qui sont contents avec différentes cultures qu'on peut voir.
Home. It feels like home.
They are the same, like just like me.
A minority group, it's a group of people who are different from others that are not as abundant as the average person.
Une minorité, selon moi, c'est des gens qui viennent de comme une autre culture. C'est quand il y a un groupe de personnes dont on peut voir physiquement qu'ils appartiennent à un autre groupe de personnes qui n'est pas de la majorité. L'inclusion, c'est accepter une personne d'une minorité ou d'un différent groupe ethnique qu'on n'est pas habitué de voir et de l'inclure comme si elle faisait partie de notre groupe.
Despite where you grew up, despite the color of your skin, and despite your religion and sexual orientation, I think that inclusion is just accepting the person for who they are.
Pour moi, l'inclusion, c'est une façon de traiter les gens plus comme des personnes plutôt qu'en fonction de leurs différences.
Together, free. Like, everybody's free to say what they want to say and free to what they believe in and to express that. Strong.
Spirituel.
Proud.
Carefree.
Diverse.
Unique.
Kind.
Acceptant.
Courage.
Natural.
Intéressant.
Free.
Peu connu.
Something that makes me proud. The music, just all the art surrounding the native culture.
Hunting. I love to traditional food as well. I like to live the traditional style when I'm home.
I really like powwows a lot, and like it's really colorful. It's really like they dance a lot. It's just like a free like feeling in your guts. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Probably our language and our practices.
I'm proud that I'm Cree. I'm proud of the language I speak. Proud of the other Indigenous communities.
I asked a whole bunch of questions in like history class about it.
I'm trying to learn more about my culture every day and learn more and maybe get some people aware of something. Sometimes I pick bits and pieces, sometimes I do research.
My parents would always talk to me about our culture, so I didn't really lose the culture, but I didn't really have the experience.
Well, I go to powwows and they do speeches about it.
I'm Algonquin and part Mohawk. I learned from my parents or my grandparents or just other adult figures.
Well, we don't really know. And I'm like, wow, don't you learn this in school? They're like, no, not really. I'm like, that's the problem.
C'est plus dans l'éducation qu'on en manque un peu. Les personnes sont pas assez éduquées.
Je crois qu'on devrait donner de l'information et présenter comme les événements et en parler un peu plus.
Some people just really don't care to learn. Some people want to learn, but they haven't had the chance or resources or just anything to really learn. Like, nobody can really learn firsthand but that person.
À moins qu'on ait une personne contact, je crois que ça peut être plus difficile, par exemple, de trouver des sources comme assez fiables qui sont écrites par ces personnes-là.
Make them want to be interested in the subject. Make them want to not focus on all the negative of what happened and all of the bad stuff that happened, and maybe just talk about more of the good stuff that happened. Talking about it more, definitely making people more aware and giving people the resources and giving people the interest, not the you're learning about this and that's final. Giving people more of an idea and giving them more of an interest on the subject instead of this happened and that's it.
If people were more open to expressing themselves and where they come from, to teach other people.
Je trouve ça vraiment intéressant parce que c'est peu connu en histoire et même dans les cahiers d'histoire, souvent je demande à mon professeur est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir plus de détails sur ça ou un supplément pour vraiment comprendre leur vision de qu'est-ce qui s'est passé dans notre histoire canadienne.
J'aimerais qu'on partage plus l'information, comme pas qu'elles se sentent obligées de partager, mais que si elles veulent partager, qu'elles soient en mesure de le faire et que les gens respectent plus ces différences-là.
If we were treated all the same equally and no one treated us in a bad way.
Well, we want to see a lot of change in this world, but we have to take it little by little.
Everybody working together really, and everybody pitching in our ideas and making people not feel like they're different, but that they're making them feel like they can be who they are and not be judged from it and not be made alienated from anybody, or people can be more inclusive maybe.
J'aimerais beaucoup voir moins de racisme ou de discrimination dans les écoles pour que vraiment les élèves soient plus acceptés, même si toutes les personnes dans la communauté se sentent à l'aise de venir à Gatineau et de s'établir et de juste apprécier.
Je veux que les gens soient plus reconnaissants et à partager leur territoire ici avec les Autochtones parce que c'est eux qui ont vu le territoire en premier. Alors, c'est à eux. C'est nous qui sont venus ici puis on a juste pris, alors c'est pas à nous, c'est à eux.
But the way we are, we're not really different from other people, but in traditional ways we are different, but we're not different from other people. We're kind of the same, we just live a different style.
Did you know that this year's orange shirt was designed by Darcy McGee's very own Maria Pian. Maria is from the Algonquin Nation of Rapid Lake, and in the summer of 2021, she was in an accident and she lost mobility of the right side of her body. But with perseverance, lots of practice, and a passion for art, she taught herself how to write and then draw with her left hand. Her design features the 7 animals that represent the 7 core values of the grandfather teachings: the truth of the turtle, the respect of the buffalo, the courage of the bear, the wisdom of the beaver, the humility of the wolf, the honesty of the sabe, and the love of the eagle. All of these values are needed in order to move towards healing and reconciliation. Thank you, Maria, for sharing your story. And thank you to everyone who purchased an orange shirt.
Kids News explains. What is reconciliation? Let's Google the word reconciliation. Here's what comes up. To reconcile or restore friendly relations. Kind of like when you get into an argument with a friend and they hurt you, but then you make up. In recent years, reconciliation has taken on a new and important role in Canada. Maybe you've heard of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, or the new federal holiday known as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. But what does it all actually mean? And why do we need reconciliation? Part of reconciliation is recognizing that non-Indigenous people have harmed Indigenous people in Canada for centuries and treated them differently than white people. For some people, reconciliation is the opportunity to heal a broken relationship and to establish a Canada that honors Indigenous people and their contributions. So, where does reconciliation stand now? The current process of reconciliation is often tied to 2 different groups. Number 1, government.
Mr. Speaker, I stand before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools. The treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history.
That was former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. He made a historic apology in the House of Commons in 2008. So that part of the process of reconciliation is about the government acknowledging something wrong and taking the steps to make it right. But many Indigenous people and their allies say an apology without action isn't enough. Like, if you say sorry to a friend for hurting them without changing your behavior, is it really an apology? Number 2, individuals. The second part of reconciliation is more about individual action. Attempts at reconciliation are happening all around us. Individuals and groups are trying to highlight the past and present unfair treatment of Indigenous people in Canada. Think of it as learning from the past and trying to do better. For example, reading about residential schools. So, when did Canada's reconciliation with Indigenous peoples begin? The process of reconciliation was made official in Canada in 2008. That was when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was launched as a way to record the effects of residential schools on Indigenous peoples. More than 6 years of work was done by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, also known as the TRC. The chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Senator Murray Sinclair, said,
"Reconciliation is about atonement, it's about making amends, it's about apology, it's about recognizing responsibility."
3 commissioners traveled across the country listening to more than 6,500 witnesses and their families about the negative impacts of residential schools and other mistreatments. The result of all that work was a report that listed 94 recommendations, or calls to action, to help repair the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities and prevent future and ongoing harm. The calls to action are separated into sections like language, health, sport, education, and media. Some examples of a call to action would be, number 7, we call on Canada to work with Indigenous people to make sure that all kids in Canada are getting a fair education and chances for a job. And number 20, we call on Canada to respect the health needs of all Indigenous people, no matter where they live in Canada. Although the federal government has acknowledged the results of the Truth and Reconciliation Report, many of these calls to action have not been addressed. What do we do now? Reconciliation is a long and hard process of making wrongs right. Although not everyone will agree on the exact way of making things better, here are some ways you can make a difference. Number 1, paying attention in history class when your teacher is talking about Canada's treatment of Indigenous peoples. Number 2, remembering and honoring residential school survivors and their families on Orange Shirt Day and beyond. Number 3, reading about Indigenous issues. Number 4, reading all 94 calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Report. Number 5, speaking up when you see Indigenous peoples being treated unfairly or you hear racist remarks. This has been KN Explains Reconciliation. For CBC Kids News, I'm Isabel DeRoy Olson. Chimiguech, bye!
You can get to know your Indigenous classmates who might be new to the region and have moved very far away from home. You can help them out by sharing some of your local knowledge about Gatineau and life in the National Capital Region. You can ask your English teacher to bring in some novels written by Indigenous Canadian authors for your next literature circle. You can participate in school-organized activities like Orange Shirt Day and Secret Path Week. You can go to Madauki Farms to learn more about local Indigenous culture and participate in their seasonal events like the Tagwagi Festival taking place this weekend, which includes the Every Child Matters Powwow. You can go to the Canadian Museum of History or the National Gallery of Canada to check out the Indigenous exhibits, artifacts, and artworks. You can go to the National Arts Centre to attend plays and concerts by Indigenous performing artists. You can continue to learn more about Indigenous issues and culture by visiting the CBC Indigenous News website, listening to CBC Radio's Unreserved with Rosetta Deerchild, or tuning in to CBC Gems Indigenous Stories to check out content like films and documentaries.
Hi everyone, I'm Miss Maloney and I'm one of the guidance counselors here at school. We wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about some important resources and services that are out there. We know a lot of what we've discussed this week and what we've learned may be difficult for some students, and so we wanted to make sure that you had access to some supports. So for our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students, there's the Hope for Wellness phone line. And that service is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they provide counseling support in Cree, Ojibwe, Inuktitut, as well as in English and French. There's also the National Residential School Crisis Line, which is a phone number that provides emotional support and crisis intervention for residential school survivors and their family members who may have been impacted as well. And for all of our students, there's the Kids Help Phone or Tejen, and there's similar services, again, offered 24 hours a day, and you can text, talk, live chat, or email with a counselor if you need to talk about anything at all. There are posters that we've put up around the school that list all of these options, all of these phone numbers. We encourage you to take photos of the posters so that you have the picture in your phone, easily accessible should ever you or a friend need to call any of the numbers. And of course, as always, you can come to Student Services if you have questions, if you want to make an appointment with your counselor. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
What was the purpose of Indian residential schools?
Who created residential schools and why?
What were the residential schools like?
How was the government able to make children go to a residential school?
When did the last residential school close?
Have you done any work or research on the topic of residential schools? Where? What did you do?
What is reconciliation and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada?
Thank you, Sims and Darcy, for joining us today for our Orange Shirt Day virtual assembly. Proceeds from the sales of our orange shirts will be going towards the Gord Downey Chady Wenjack Fund. We are a legacy school with this fund, and we have made a commitment to do something. And our next Indigenous Awareness campaign will be taking place from October 17th to the 22nd with Secret Path Week. Thank you.